The suppression of desire is not wisdom. It is fear in disguise. Carl Jung. Desire, it whispers, it lingers, it coils around the edges of your consciousness like smoke, elusive, persistent, seductive. It doesn't need permission to enter. It just is. It shows up when you least expect it, during silence, in the pause between breaths, in the stare you hold a second too long. And in those moments, the question becomes, will you ignore it? Or will you admit that something ancient inside you is listening? From the moment we emerge from the womb, the current of desire runs through us. It shapes our hunger, our cries, our needs. It defines our passions, steers our fears, and gives rise to our ambitions. It haunts us, tempts us, and sometimes torments us. From our earliest years, society tells us to tame it. School tells us to redirect it. Religion tells us to crucify it. But history, real, raw, and unfiltered, shows us that the most transformative, creative, destructive, and revolutionary moments in the human story have all been ignited by desire. So here's the truth we avoid. Is desire your greatest weakness, or is it the source of your deepest power? Freud warned that denying it would rot us from the inside out. Jung believed it held the map to our authentic self. And whether you look at ancient myths, modern cinema, literature, art, or war, the thread is the same. Desire is the unseen force that gives birth to beauty and disaster alike. So now the spotlight turns inward, toward you. Will you dare to listen to the whisper of your own desire? Will you face the heat that rises when your longings speak? Or will you bolt the door, plug your ears, and convince yourself you never heard a thing? Make no mistake, this is not just about lust. This is about the fire beneath your identity, and it's time to go there. There's a ghost that trails you, not visible, not loud, but ever present. It doesn't speak in words. It moves in fragments of memory, unexplained cravings, and dreams that leave you sweating. You might try to exile it, to shove it down, numb it with discipline, distract it with noise. But it waits, quiet, patient, starving. This is your desire. It's the shadow beneath every decision, the silent partner behind every hesitation. It's the pulse behind the questions you're afraid to ask and the truths you pretend don't matter. And here's the tragedy. We live in a culture that talks about everything except this, that hushes desire beneath layers of politeness, busyness, and shame, that reduces it to something taboo rather than something sacred. So the question becomes, where does desire come from? What does it want from us? And what happens psychologically, emotionally, even spiritually, when we refuse to hear it speak? To answer that, we have to descend beneath the surface, strip away the masks, go beyond the ego, into the realms of psychoanalysis, mythology, and culture, where desire doesn't ask for permission, it just burns. This first part of our journey will pull back the curtain on how desire operates inside the human mind. We'll explore Freud's theory of repression and Jung's concept of the shadow. We'll also examine how desire manifests in your everyday life, quietly, invisibly, until it either transforms you or destroys you. And by the end of this segment, one thing will be clear. Desire is not a side character in your story. It is the silent author of your becoming. The nature of desire, a restless hunger. Imagine a child reaching toward a candle's flame. An adult yells, "Don't touch that, it'll burn you." The child pauses, hands suspended, eyes still locked on the flicker. The danger only makes it more mesmerizing. This is desire in its purest form, a hunger sharpened by denial. From the moment we become aware of the world, we are conditioned to restrain ourselves. We're told not to scream, not to demand, not to touch what we want. Some of these boundaries are necessary. We don't want children burning themselves on fire. But many of these restrictions are social, psychological, and arbitrary. Don't be too loud. Don't be too emotional. Don't show too much want. Slowly, we learn to mute our appetite for life, and yet that energy doesn't go away. It just sinks beneath the surface. Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, argued that nothing truly disappears from the human mind. It simply retreats, buries itself in the unconscious. But buried does not mean dead. The desires we deny do not vanish, they change shape. They become something else, something we don't always recognize. Freud's model of the mind, the cage and the beast. To understand what happens to repressed desire, we must first explore Freud's architecture of the psyche, the id, the ego, and the superego. The id is your primal self, chaotic, untamed, impulsive. It lives for pleasure, power, and satisfaction. It doesn't care about rules, time, or consequences, it just wants. Then there's the ego, the part of you that's grounded in reality. It's the negotiator. It tries to find a balance between what you crave and what the world allows. And finally, the superego, the inner authority figure. It's your internalized parent, preacher, judge. It scolds, it warns, it says you shouldn't, you mustn't, that's wrong. Desire is born in the id. It surges upward like lava, reaching for expression. But before it can erupt, it runs into the superego, which slams it back down. The ego, caught in the crossfire, tries to hold the line. And when the desire is too dangerous to confront, it gets repressed, locked in the dark. But the story doesn't end there. That desire you pushed down, it doesn't disappear. It sneaks into your dreams, into your obsessions, into your habits and fears and patterns of sabotage. It might disguise itself as a compulsion, or transform into art, or explode in rage, but one way or another, it comes back. Jung's shadow, the monster in the mirror. Where Freud focused on structure, Jung focused on integration. He introduced a concept that explains what happens when we deny not just a desire, but entire parts of ourselves. He called it the shadow. The shadow is everything you refuse to acknowledge about yourself. Your lust, your rage, your envy, your hunger for power. The more you suppress it, the darker and more volatile it becomes. Picture someone raised to believe anger is evil. They grow up polite, smiling, measured. But one day, someone cuts them off in traffic, and suddenly, they erupt. It's not just about the driver. It's about all the anger they buried finally boiling over. That's the shadow. Desire, too, becomes a shadow when it's denied. A person who hides their longing for connection might become cold, distant, or controlling. Someone who suppresses their ambition might sabotage every opportunity. It's not conscious, that's the danger. It's the unconscious taking the wheel. Desire in everyday life, the silent puppet master. You think you're making decisions. You think you're choosing your career, your relationships, your priorities. But beneath those choices is an invisible architect, desire. You might not see it. You might deny it. But it's there. Take two co-workers. There's chemistry, but it's unspoken. They keep it professional, but their laughter lingers. Their conversations drift toward intimacy. They find excuses to be near each other. They both pretend it's nothing until it's not, until it erupts into passion or ruin. Or consider someone raised in a family that demonizes ambition. They learn to stay small, to downplay their goals, to serve others. But deep down, they ache to lead, to build, to achieve. That hunger doesn't die. It mutates into resentment, envy, or burnout. It shows up as sabotage, procrastination, or sudden breakdowns. Desire ignored does not disappear. It waits. And eventually it finds its way out, one way or another. The thin line between passion and obsession. When we acknowledge desire, when we integrate it, it becomes power. It fuels creativity, love, innovation, revolution. It's the engine behind every masterpiece, every movement, every moment that makes your heart race. But when we deny it, it festers, it warps, it becomes obsession, addiction, destruction. History is filled with kings who lost empires over forbidden love, geniuses who were consumed by their passions, and ordinary people who lost everything chasing what they refused to face. So the question becomes, how do we navigate this fire without being burned? Jung's warning, the shadow always returns. Jung didn't just theorize the shadow, he lived in it. He saw firsthand the destruction that comes from unacknowledged lust. When desire is buried, it doesn't vanish. It adapts. It hides behind piety, morality, and restraint. It becomes hypocrisy, compulsion, deviation. The preacher who condemns lust from the pulpit is caught in an affair. The moral politician collapses under the weight of scandal. The disciplined executive implodes in secret indulgence. These aren't exceptions. They're patterns. Because what we repress doesn't die. It mutates. The disease of denial. Repression is not virtue, it's pathology. And the cost of denying desire is enormous. Psychologically, emotionally, and even physically. Sexual repression has been linked to depression, anxiety, guilt-ridden fantasies, and an inability to connect deeply with others. It erodes intimacy, fosters shame, and leaves people fragmented, disconnected from their own authenticity. You cannot numb desire without numbing joy, creativity, and connection alongside it. People either shut down completely or they rebel recklessly, swinging between numbness and indulgence. Neither is liberation. Both are bondage. The societal cost. When culture represses desire, and it's not just individuals who suffer, entire societies collapse under the weight of repressed desire. The cultures that shout the loudest about morality are often hiding the darkest secrets. The more we idolize purity, the more we produce perversion. The more we criminalize desire, the more we cultivate double lives. Religious institutions, authoritarian governments, corporate cultures. Many claim to uphold discipline. But behind the scenes, exploitation, scandal, abuse. Not in spite of repression, but because of it. Suppressed desire becomes a weapon, and that weapon always turns on the people. The way out. Integration, not indulgence. Jung didn't say give in, he said own it. The only path out of the prison of repression is integration. That means facing your desires, not to obey them blindly, but to understand them deeply. To know their voice, to know your fire. When you recognize your lust, not as a threat but as a signal, you reclaim your autonomy. You learn to channel that energy into art, into connection, into purpose, into transcendence. Suppression breeds monsters. But integration? Integration breeds mastery. The final toll, when repressed desire becomes destiny. To repress desire is to forfeit authorship of your life. The parts of you that you refuse to face will rule you from the shadows. What you do not make conscious, as Jung warned, will return to you as fate. The lover who denies longing becomes the cynic. The priest who fears temptation becomes the predator. The artist who buries their fire becomes the bitter critic. And the soul who never dares to feel, slowly, silently, dies. There is no greater regret than living a life afraid of your own truth. A life where you never really felt, never really burned, never really lived. So now, I leave you with one question. Will you face your desire, or will you let it devour you from within?